And
Hello and welcome to VC House. And today we talk with Sasha Bernier, who is the senior vice president at Cheltenham Enterprises. It is a single family office, and mostly, as I know, they invest in different kind of assets, but also they invest in startups and sometimes in venture funds. And so we will try to understand today uh, how this company works and how Sasha invests. And Sasha, can you at first tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, sure. So I graduated from law school because my parents came from technical backgrounds that were doctors. And I knew I didn't want to be a doctor, so I decided I wanted to do something. And they said, hey, go to law school. So I went to law school. But after law school, I realized I didn't want to be a lawyer. And so I went into finance and I worked for an investment bank called Evercore Partners. And then after that period of time, I went to work for two other finance organizations. In one of the organizations, I met my partner who recruited me after I was leaving to basically work with him in investing in different types of asset classes. But I didn't know at the time what a family office was, but he and his partners and his family had made money in real estate. And I was actually going to work in a project in Brazil that was in clean energy. And he said, look, you're probably going to fail in this project. And and why don't you do it under my investment vehicle? And if it doesn't work out, you can come back and work for my family office. And he ended up being right. The project failed. And so I went back to work for him. And I've been working for him for 10 years. And historically, we've been primarily real estate investors. We looked at other asset classes, but about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I made a push for us to start looking into companies, particularly venture capital. And so that's how my journey into this space began.
Okay, I see. Thank you. And so tell us about the family office, please.
Yeah, I mean, every so there's a saying that every family office has its own structure and has its own paradigm or its own culture. And it's true because, when you are working for a family office, the lead or the patriarch or the person who made the capital, they've been so successful in what they do that the imprint of how they've made their wealth or how they think about things permeate throughout the culture. And so I would say it's probably very similar to in our sense, in that my partner made money in real estate, made money in finance, and I believe that when he looks, everything that we look at has those lens, right? Because in finance, in particular, those who are good investors always think about what can go wrong, what's the downside, and I think that everything we look at, and originally because of our DNA in real estate was the easiest thing for us to understand and put our arms around. And I think that that's been our core because we have my partner has main assets classes that have real estate. He has real estate holdings, and we invest in other sponsors. But the interesting thing that we found is just like tech, when you're investing with other people, and historically, looking for good managers, people who have experience, who have vision, who can have a real plan in executing their a business plan is the same things that we look for in the VC space. And what I've learned is that when you can adapt into those portfolios, and look for people who have clear business plans and visions, whether it's a fund, whether it's a company, those same basic principles of real estate that permeate our culture that we've learned, I've also we've been applying into VC. Now, I'm not going to act like we've been successful all the way. It's definitely been a learning curve, to be quite honest with you. But I think for us, and especially because we have certain principles, but we're willing to think differently and think outside the box and learn from other people. And usually when we do these investments, we understand we're not experts, so we look for people who can help us, and that's the great thing about being in the family office space. I'm also involved in an organization that I co-lead with a friend of mine, that has 85 families globally, spanning from Asia all the way to the US, to South America, where we can lean on each other, and use the expertise. So my partner might have experience in real estate. We might have another person who's has expertise in solar and energy, another family that's very well in entertainment and owns teams.
Sure.
So this organization has allowed us to pull the talent to look at different direct investments.
So it's a kind of association for limited partners. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, it's called FOCIO. We don't really publicize it because it's an organization internally where we use each other to get knowledge and learn about what, if we want to learn about a specific sector, get information into that sector.
Oh, interesting. So it's okay. Yeah, it's a really good idea. Just mm, yeah, to exchange knowledge and expertise inside. Yeah, we probably do the same in our VC house, but mostly with VCs. But again, as we have many VCs, probably it will be interesting for them. Um, why have you decided to invest in two venture funds, as I understand? Yeah, is it correct?
Yes, correct. Well, so what I've learned in terms of when you're an expert in something, you're an expert in something, right? And so I can't go out there and start telling you, oh, I know how this specific deep tech technology works, right? Or I'll give you an interesting example. Blockchain technology, I became more interested in it about when I started traveling more and more into Asia. I was traveling to Southeast Asia, but had an ecosystem of friends in South Korea. And I was amazed by how quickly that ecosystem was adopting blockchain, right? I had actually met, for instance, a 20-year-old from Russia one time that was going to the Philippines, traveling from Hong Kong, and he was telling me, yeah, I just bought all these real estate properties with Bitcoin using smart contracts. And I was like, and he was literally 20 years old, and he's like, yeah, I didn't go to college. I learned about blockchain, and what was interesting was he was telling me that he was going to meet his team in the Philippines. He had a blockchain team that was looking at different technologies and also trying to figure out which cryptocurrencies to trade in and out. And by all and large, he was very, very successful. And then I remember after that meeting a lot of other people, and I'm a dinosaur now. I turned 40 years old this year, and prior to that, I wasn't a believer. I'm not going to lie. You can go to the tape and you can hear me say, "Oh, I don't know. People don't know what they're talking about with Bitcoin." This was many years ago, and what I realized was, different generations think differently. Number one, and you can still have your own principles, and sometimes we get stuck in what we call confirmation bias, right? You might not believe in something, so you will keep getting information to make you believe in what you believe in, to confirm what your biases are, right? And when I started seeing all these individuals at such a young age adopting the technology, and I had been blind to it, and I began to see the usefulness. And I began to see the usefulness more in blockchain because in countries in Southeast Asia that are growing, where there aren't efficient ways to do things, I saw, wow, these technologies are real, right? It's coming. And so I started deciding that I had to adapt and learn. And we and I wasn't going to become a blockchain expert overnight, right? And so I started making a push to look at some of the funds. We've looked at some great funds, like Top Tier is a really great. The Top Tier is more of a fund of funds that looks at, that has expertise. They've been doing it for quite a while, located out in San Francisco. There's another fund called Gobi, located out in Southeast Asia. And what all they had in common was a true expertise in different fields, right? And dedicated teams to those fields, because you really have to be a student of what you're learning. It's not like, well, one of the issues that I'm seeing, like literally, Alexander, is that almost every day, I get 10 to hundreds of pitch books, right? And having experience, real experience, right? Because I have made mistakes in funds, okay? And I can talk to you through that. Having real experience, really understanding the ecosystem, okay? And having the ability to understand how you're going to get from point A to point B to point C is such an important thing, right?
Okay, Sasha, but have you invested in one of the blockchain funds at last?
So it's interesting. We are about to make an allocation to one specific one. And that took a while, but we will be allocating to this will be actually a fund of funds also that has some of the, there were a couple funds that we had identified that were experts in, that we thought were experts, but we wanted broad exposure. Well, I'll give them a plug. Para 5 one, Variant is another group that really understood the trends. And so, yeah.
Okay, so the first fund you invested is a blockchain fund, yep, and it is fund of funds. Is it correct?
It's a fund of funds, yes.
Yeah, and the second one?
But the first fund that we invested in was not a blockchain. I was using that as an example. It was it's a group called Top Tier in San Francisco.
Mhm.
They have San Francisco and office in London, and they're excellent. Just an excellent group. A woman by the name of Lisa Edgars is unfortunately retiring this year. It was really who brought me into understanding.
Have you invested into this fund Top Tier? Because you know the guys for a long time, or it was just a great brand name?
Well, I'm not gonna lie, like having a great brand name always helps, right? It's sometimes, there's a reason why you have a great brand name. But one of my colleagues in my family office organization had a good relationship with a woman by the name of Lisa Edgar.
Mhm.
And he explained to me the things to think about as I was describing. And when I met her and I met the team, I just felt it was the right group, the right team. And it's been a great experience to invest with. But yeah, brand name obviously helps, but they were, I thought, good managers also.
Okay, but at the end, which portfolio is making better results? Real estate or startups or investing in VCs? Who makes better?
Mm, see, that's a tough question. And so when you're allocating, you have to think about how you want to position yourself on these things, because with real estate, I get cash flow quarterly, monthly, whatever, so I know what I'm getting, right? So there's a benchmark. You can look at occupancy, where in VC, it's a long game, right? And so you hope that when there's an exit, you do well. And with COVID, it was kind of scary with some of the companies that we saw that we were involved in. But you won't really know how you do until you really exit, right? You get some distributions and you have up rounds, so it's all paper money. I mean, I can talk to you about one fund right now.
Okay, so you are still waiting for results. Yeah.
Right. I mean, there've been. Okay, so I'll give you an example, Alexander. I'll give you an example between a company, a fund, top tier, and I won't name the fund because they're not actually performing. And I think, and I'll give you the reason why it's important to understand who you're investing with, right? So with top tier, when I talked about, and we talked a little bit about like brand name and why that sometimes can be important, is when I was explaining the ecosystem, they when they tell me that there is an up round of the company, I believe it, right? Or I'm more comfortable with it, right? The reason is you have a, really smart money expertise coming out of, I see the Golden Gate Bridge behind your background, that are helping a company move along to get from point A to point B, right? And sometimes you hear people say, oh, I don't want VC money, or I only want family office money. Why do they say that? It's because a lot of the times they want dumb money, right? And so you don't really know if that valuation is real. Okay. I'll give you another example. There was a VC fund that was a deep tech focused fund. I was blown away and amazed by the team. Okay. In the sense that they had great finance backgrounds. Remember, I talked about confirmation bias. They came from some of the top Wall Street firms. Okay. And they formed a fund. And in my mind, I was like, oh, smart guys, some top names in the funds. Okay. From the banks. And so originally they decided they wanted to focus on deep tech. Okay, so they were doing deep tech stuff in healthcare, deep tech stuff in agriculture, deep tech stuff in artificial intelligence, but none of them had any experience, none of them. And what they were doing was they were raising money from other family offices globally. Okay, and they kept going to the same families for each round. And then, but as I talked to the companies, I realized, wait a second, they don't even really know if these families are putting in money into these companies. These groups, this fund has no experience in that sector. Okay, how can you trust that benchmark, that valuation? How is it really an up round? And that was like a turning moment for me where I realized, wow, like there's so many VC funds that you really have to make sure that you pick the right ones. And so, on paper, I'm showing that I made a lot of money on this, but like I can tell you, I know when I studied this, I was like, wait a second, these companies, there's really no way to get from point A to point B with C. The ecosystem wasn't there. And so that's why it's really important to understand what are some of the funds that you're looking into, because there can be mistakes really, really, really fast.
Okay, I see. I see. Thank you, Sasha. So I understand that you told me twice about confirmation biases. So you probably like Daniel Kahneman very much, yeah?
Right, right.
Yeah, this book is for venture capitalists. And okay, so and let's imagine the situation when, for example, unknown for you, VC would like to raise some money from you. Does it have sense to apply to your family office to raise? No, or
Yes, I mean, definitely. So what I'll just tell you what our process is. Okay. Um, it's a simple process. Um, for me personally, okay, I like to see traction, a little bit of traction. So you mentioned, for instance, that you were looking at a company that had $4 million of revenue. That's good traction, right? And what we do is our process is you basically send it to me. You give me a quick summary. You tell me what areas the expert you're focusing on, right? And I really like to see things that are solving issues or problems. And then the second thing I do is I then go and look for a person that has been successful in that space. So, for instance, you might give me a deal that's in entertainment. You send me the deal. I go talk to someone that's in entertainment, for instance. That's just as an example. Or you might be in clean energy. I go talk to a family that has expertise in clean energy. And then once we get that, once we study it and we say, okay, you're really resolving an issue. There's a need here. We then try to understand your business plan. We talk with you. then try to figure out, do we think that you're the type of person that's really going to stick it through? Because that's really important. And I'll give you another example, Alexander. One of the companies that we invested in a company that was sort of in a down round that had some of the top names. Okay, and what they did was they helped. There was a special type of technology that when you go and you go build pipes and things of that nature, it allows the pipes to last longer, whether you're using it for oil and gas or things of that nature, right? And there was a clear expertise by the founder. It was a great scientist, really understood the actual technical aspects. But when it came to leading the company in terms of uh, bringing in the right staff, doing operations, understanding the marketing aspect of it, making decisions on how you're going to grow. The actual technical skills on that didn't really work out, right? And so you when looking for a leader and understanding who's leading the business, you have to be able to either separate the two, right? Someone has that very good technical aspects and can be a really good CEO or president, or if they're early on and they're doing both, you need to make that decision. Do they have those abilities? And so so that's an example of, so when we're looking for that, we want to see those different qualities. So yeah, we would, you could share my information because we're actively looking, and I can give you an example of a company. Well, it came through a fund that we're a partner with. One of the things that I've been looking for is, we're very bullish in Asia. There's a fund called Gobi. Um, Thomas Sao is the CEO, and they have a very great business model. And basically, the model is they have a bunch of little VC funds all across Southeast Asia. They serve as the umbrella. They back the VC funds under them, and then it pushes through deal flow. And one of the companies, so we're an investor in Gobi, and Gobi brings us co-investments, and that's another really good way to invest in other companies. Is you find the right partners. And there's another company called Carsum. It's located in Malaysia, and what they were solving for is that there was a very opaque market for the selling of used cars, right? And so I could go to you, and you dominate the market in buying used cars, and you as the buyer are the only person that actually has information to what things are selling for, right? And if me as a seller doesn't have that information, I won't get the best output, right? And so the CEO of that company was not only had the technical experience, but had marketing experience, understood the issues that as a customer, as himself, that one goes through. And so he formed a company called Carsum. And what Carsum does essentially is it helps me as a seller of the car match with the best possible buyer of my car. And what it does, what he does is, what he did was, you bring your car to your shop. Uses They have the individuals that look at the car and try to give you an estimate using looking at all the data in that area, and matches you with the best buyer. And what I liked about what they did was they focused first on Malaysia, perfected the market, and then they started expanding into other regions. For instance, they went into Indonesia, and have been very successful in Indonesia. There was one of the partners that tried to grow and couldn't grow that fast. And going back to the term confirmation bias, they realized that when people think of Southeast Asia, they pull it all into one thinking, but every place has its own culture. And one of the competitors struggled, and so they made sure that they were open-minded to understand how that culture adapts. And yeah, now they're doing a series C, and it's been a great example of someone who adapts, opens up the mind, understood a problem, and built a team around to grow it. So
Thank you, Sasha. Thank you for your interview. Thank you for your
oh,
advice.
okay,
And yes, I hope to see you again in our VC House meeting.
great. Thank you, Alexander. You guys are doing great stuff. I really enjoyed your concept of bringing different people together around the world. I think that that's what we need to today, is to find global solutions to global problems. And I think what you guys are doing are great, because it's what we need right now. There's no one way of doing things. And I think that how VC House has opened up the world and connecting it, especially during this period, is good. So keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure to meet you today.
Thank you. Thank you, Natalia.